Welcome to Lesson 25 of Daily Theology. Today we're going to cover the first of 10 lessons on the doctrine of salvation, and it has to do with the subject of common grace, which refers to the grace or favor that God gives to all people, both believers and unbelievers. Theologically, common grace is distinguished from saving grace. Saving grace is typically what we're thinking and talking about when the word grace is used. And it will be the general subject of the next 9 lessons. Saving grace is particular rather than common, meaning the experience and benefits of it are exclusive to those who believe. But common grace is the sense in which God blesses all people in general, because He's made all people in His image and is therefore fatherly to all people. Ephesians 3:15 says, "From God the Father, every family in heaven and on earth is named." When I hear common grace, my mind immediately goes to Matthew 5, to the Sermon on the Mount. In verse 44, Jesus teaches us to love and pray for even our enemies. Then in verse 45, He spoke about the character of God on which that command is based. He said, "For God makes His sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust." Everyone benefits from sunshine and rain, both of which are necessities of life and unmerited blessings of God. Paul talked about this in witnessing to heated unbelievers. In Acts 14:17, he said to them, "God did not leave Himself without witness, for He did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness." All food and drink ultimately comes from God, so it's a common grace. Based on Romans 2:14 and 15, we should view the human conscience as a common grace. That passage says that God has written His law, His moral code of right and wrong on every mind. Our conscience both guides and convicts us, and it's a tremendous blessing not only to individuals but to the world. Based on Romans 13:1-7, we should view human government as a common grace. It says this authority has been instituted by God, and that it's His servant for the good of people by punishing what is bad or wrong. From this and other more specific texts, we should view parents as a common grace, for their authority figures God established even before government. Think of how much worse the world would be without parents or governments. Based on 1 Timothy 4:3-4, we should view marriage as a common grace, for it's the biblical foundation of parenthood and families. That passage also should lead us to consider all of God's good creation as a gift of His grace to the world. Now, while it's obvious that everyone doesn't receive His gifts in equal measure, it's equally obvious that everyone receives His gifts in some measure. For an example of that, and one more example of common grace, I'll take you back to Genesis chapter 4, where we find the story of Cain murdering his brother Abel. God poured out His vengeance on Cain and made the rest of his life difficult and miserable, but He marked him so that no one else would take vengeance on him. God didn't kill Cain immediately. He allowed him to live and marry and have children and work. The point is that for any sinner, which describes us all, life itself with all the abilities necessary to sustain and continue it is an undeserved gift from God. Every breath we take and everything we're able to do is common grace. The fact that God doesn't cast all of us into hell immediately is due to unearned favor from Him. Many of us wonder why God doesn't do that, especially when it comes to sinners other than us, sinners we consider worse than us. We ask, why does God allow people like Cain to enjoy even one more second of life? Well, we find the answer in Romans 2:4, which says, "Do you presume on the riches of God's kindness and forbearance and patience, not knowing that God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance. Common grace is given by God so that His people will praise Him, but also so that lost people have an opportunity to recognize that the good things in life are from Him and then turn to Him for salvation. Have you done this? We'll turn our attention to the grace of salvation Monday. See you then.